Hello, and you are listening to Squash Radio. This is a brand new podcast that wants to bring the inside of squash to life by serving up the best stories. We are launching this channel with some in-depth interviews with some great people from the squash world. But we're also trying a little experiment first by doing two versions of each interview. One is the full-length interview that Squash Radio had with each guest, and two is a more produced version that takes some of the highlights from each conversation. Making those cuts is actually pretty challenging since we think it's all great content. But let us know what you think. Should we continue to do both? Send us an email to squashradio@gmail.com. Also, if you have any great stories that involve squash, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and thank you for listening. What about this?
This call is being recorded.
Hey there, squash fans, and welcome to another episode of Squash Radio. We're very excited to bring you this guest today. He's based out of Chicago, and he's a guy that just radiates enthusiasm while even working tirelessly. He's been a pillar of the squash community in the Midwest, and just in general, is a great guy. This is John Flanigan, who is the athletic director at the University Club of Chicago and is also part of the 6-person leadership team to help oversee the strategic direction, finances, and operation of the club. Prior to his role as athletic director, he was the head squash professional at the University Club as well as in Minneapolis, and has also served as the tournament director of 3 U.S. Open squash championships during his career. In 2015, Squash Magazine named him as part of the top 50 most influential persons in squash in the United States. Outside of squash, he also has a passion for literature, poetry, and music, where he tries to practice almost every day. He writes his own music and does several performances a year with his band 30 South. I had the pleasure of overlapping with John at the University Club of Chicago when I was the assistant squash pro and assistant tournament director of the Windy City Open for almost 5 years. We've since stayed in close contact and overlapped on several other squash projects. So here's a little overview of what we talk about during our conversation. We kick off the conversation talking about John's path to finding his first squash court, but then shift gears to talk about his role within the global squash community as the tournament director of the Windy City Open, which is one of the top 8 squash tournaments in the world. We do spend a fair amount of time talking about the Windy City Open, and for good reason. There's so many facets to this event. But we start off with the basics on how to get the glass court into the building. So as you may know, in the club industry, there's always an expectation to go above and beyond to deliver. And the story that John shares with us about the Windy City Open and how they get the glass court into the venue, I think illustrates it pretty well. The rest of the time we spend talking about sponsors and how they make the event possible, but also the value that the sponsors get out of the event. And don't forget to stay tuned for the quickfire round with John Flanigan and find out about his new goal that many people might find a significant challenge. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and here we go. There's so many places I can start, but I think for you, John, there's a list of names I want to read to just orient the crowd on who you are.
Okay.
And that's Amanda Sobey, world ranked number 6, Trinity squash coach and legend Paul Asiante, CEO of Comcast NBC Brian Roberts, and even Wolverine himself, Hollywood actor Hugh Jackman. And on that same list is yourself, John Flanigan.
Wow, I never really thought of myself in the same crowd as those people, especially Hugh Jackman. But the common thread is squash, obviously.
Yeah, well, this was in 2015 Squash Magazine issue of the top 50 most influential persons in the United States involved in squash, and you are among that list. So, when you found out you got that, how did you react?
Oh, I guess the first reaction was just it was a great honor. I've been involved in the sport for I guess about 30 years now from the time I first picked up a racket. And, like a lot of people who are involved in the sport, you do a lot for it day in, day out, especially, if you're really in the business of being a squash pro at a club or, in any facet of the game. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who deserve recognition and yeah, it's great to be recognized by U.S. Squash.
Well, where I'd like to start off is actually going back to before you were in the top 50 most influential people in the United States for squash, and even before you touch a squash racket. Talk to me a little bit about your jobs and your career path prior to finding squash.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of my career path is definitely a crooked road. But I'll start with my sports past, I guess. I grew up in southern Indiana, a little town called New Albany, and I grew up playing basketball like most people in Indiana do. But I'm the youngest of seven, and so all my older siblings played tennis. We had a public park in our backyard where everyone played tennis, and I was no exception, and that's what I played through high school. And I thought I would really be into it in college. I went to school at a Division III school. I tried out for the team. I made the team, and I quit the next day because I decided I was just kind of burned out in tennis and wanted to do something else. But after college, I got married right out of college to my wife, Michelle Zurkowski, and we're still married today, 36 years later. But out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. We both had studied abroad, Michelle and I, and wanted to go abroad again. I majored in English and French in college, and there's not a lot of job opportunities like right at your doorstep when you major in the liberal arts like that. And I really never considered myself much of a business guy. So we got involved with a volunteer program to go abroad and teach English at a university in Poland. And that was in 1982. So martial law was still on then. And we've lived pretty much and we were, I guess, kind of privileged Westerners, but we lived on a student teacher's, not a student teacher, teaching assistant kind of salary. So we did that for a year. I did play tennis over there, actually, made some good friends in Poland playing on their a club tennis team that the University of Lublin had. I came back after that to the United States, and, Michelle and I both trying to find our way. Ended up back in southern Indiana. I took a job in Louisville, Kentucky, working in a French bakery because I'm fluent in French, and they'd hired a French baker, and he didn't speak in English. So I think unemployment was in double digits at that point in time, so I was just happy to have a job and try to find myself, figure out what I wanted to do. Did that for a year, and then after that, I moved to Colorado, to Durango, to help my sister and her husband start their own business, which was taking people up into the wilderness, the Wiminuche Wilderness area. They're in the southwestern corner of Colorado, but they use llamas as pack animals. So I was kind of a camp cook and assistant guide, llama herder, I guess. I'm not really a herder, just trying to wrangler, I guess that's the
Wrangler,
term.
yeah.
When you take care of that. Did that for a summer. After that ended, worked in a chocolate factory in Durango, the actual factory, not a Rocky Mountain chocolate factory outlet, but the actual factory for a year. Moved to Minneapolis after that because although we loved Durango, the small town, we lived in a really, I guess it was isolated. It was way up a valley in a little A-frame shack with no TV, no phone. So definitely different from modern life today, but we really liked it. But it finally started to drive Michelle crazy, I think. So she's a very bright, gifted person. She applied to graduate school. We ended up in Minnesota. She could go to the University of Minnesota. And that's where I first took up squash.
I remember you telling me, I believe you said it was apprentice to a master candy maker, right?
Oh, yeah, that was in Durango.
In Durango.
This wonderful gentleman, Everett Seeley, who used to work for the Mars chocolate factory. It's funny, these cooking jobs I had, like the factory and the bakery, they taught me organizational skills. Because you have to time everything in the kitchen and in the bakery about, when you make what, when it comes out, and you had to have a plan every day. And that really helped me. Yeah.
The skills that translate over towards any other job, yeah. But then you found squash, so sort of taking a crooked path there. But
what happened there is I had illusions of being a writer at the time, and so Michelle was in graduate school, and I was just looking for a part-time job where I could go do some writing. I actually got a job as a locker room attendant at the Minneapolis Athletic Club, and that's where I first saw squash being played. It was hardball back then. That was in 1985, 86. And I knew how to string rackets from the time I was a kid. My involvement in tennis, something my brother and I did in the basement of our home to make money. And we, in Minneapolis, I found out there was a club in St. Paul called the Commodore Squash Club, a revered squash club. And they had big events there. And I called over there to find out how to string a squash racket one day in terms of how high I could put the tension on it. And the pro there started talking to me and said, hey, we need somebody to string rackets. And of course, I needed the money. So I went over there and met the pro and the club, John Jasinski. is the pro's name. One of my mentors,
Mm.
great guy. But I'd never even really heard of squash growing up in a little town in southern Indiana, and I guess going in the door, thought, gosh, I knew a little bit about it. I guess maybe I thought it was my impression was it was going to be really snobby, because it's a high-end economic demographic. But I walked in, and there were all these people like hanging around drinking beer and, from all over the world, and they were all super friendly. And
You felt like you could fit in?
Yeah. I thought, people drinking beer and with a racket around and having a good time, I could do this.
Right, yeah.
So actually, the first guys I saw play, I kind of watched like they were like, D hardball players. And, I was a pretty good tennis player. And I watched these guys play. I'm like, this is the dumbest racket sport I've ever seen. And one night I was stringing rackets late at the Commodore Club, and these two guys, Frank Fairman and Jamie Barrett, both of them had played in college, one at Princeton, one at Yale, I believe. And late at night, they were, after their jobs were hitting like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And I went down and watched them, and I just was kind of awestruck. I was like, wow, it's a totally different game from the D players I saw, and these guys were really impressive. So it kind of got me involved in the sport.
And now that's been, almost 30 years?
Yeah, that was like about 30 years ago. And of course, so we've seen the change from hardball to softball, like a lot of people who've been involved in the U.S. in the game for a long time. How about, did you start playing hardball, or did you start with the international game?
I started playing with a softball, but on an on a hardball court. Playing hardball, scoring to 15. So, I mean, I didn't. So there was definitely a transition period of that I experienced, but nothing is, I think, as stark because the decision had been made. So it was just a matter of time.
So that was probably in the mid 90s, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, one other thing before we dive more into the squash background is, as I've gotten to know you over the years, two things I think maybe aren't as obvious to someone who just meets you is your passion for music and literature. And you've been able to pursue your profession and excel in it, but then you've also done such a remarkable job of keeping up your passion. And I just want to talk a little bit about how you still explore that now and how you kind of scratch that itch.
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. I mean, it's quite sure where to start. I think it's important that we all have, outside interests of our job. I mean, everyone in America, it's so easy to get so career focused on everything. And not that I'm not career focused, I certainly am, but these other parts of your brain and your heart and your soul, you definitely have to work to keep them alive and keep them going. And, I started playing guitar when I was a kid, never had much formal training, played more in college, played in a garage band or two, played guitar, and just really enjoyed it. And I've always loved reading as a kid, and then I studied English and French in college, as I mentioned earlier. And playing the guitar is a great way to meet people. I had someone from the great generation tell me once when they were kids, everybody learned to play piano, and they'd go to a party at somebody's house, and there'd be a piano there, and somebody, you'd sit down at the piano, and everybody knew a handful of songs. They'd sit around the piano and have drinks and sing the song, kind of like a living room concert or piano bar. I think that's, for my generation, that's what the guitar became. A lot of people know how to play guitar, could make friends and play music. And, music, it's, I think, if you're a music fan, popular music, rock music, blues, whatever, it speaks to all of us. It's part of who we are. So, yeah, I've always tried to keep it alive. It's definitely been challenging at some point in time. And I'm sure I drive my family crazy sometimes playing the same songs over and over. And in terms of literature, like I said earlier, I wanted to, I had illusions of being a writer, and I never penned a novel or anything. I wrote some short stories. I had some poetry published. But I still do songwrite, I can tell you that, and perform my songs with bands around the area here and there. And that's a real fun thing to do. It's hard work, kind of, to put it all together, but it's really fun at the end to play music and share a song with someone that you helped make with another person.
I mean, even just today, you were practicing for you. I think you have a gig coming up. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, this has become a tradition. I guess I felt like you said, how do you find a way to make time kind of to do this stuff? And the University Club, where I've worked for 18 years, is big on building community, and we have all these different kinds of societies there. There's a gardening society and a wine society and civic affairs and a golf society. And so I decided I wanted to meet some other musicians. I kept bumping into people who used to play, music in a band or whatever. And I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we started a band society? So we called this the House Band Society. And fortunate, we've been, club members have joined us. We've got about think 6 or 7 band members now, and we've played the Windy City Open party with the pros on Saturday night for probably 6 years running. And Metro Squash, which is an urban squash education program here in Chicago, we play their gala every year now for 3 or 4 years. So yeah, but we practice at the University Club in the group exercise room, usually on one evening, weeknight, and one weekend day when we've got a gig coming up. Yeah, I was down at the club earlier today with 5 wonderful members, and we laughed a lot. There's a lot of really quick-witted, funny people in the band, and laid down some good grooves and, getting ready for the Windy City Open party. I will be honest and tell you it is a little exhausting by the time I get on the stage at 8:30 or 9 on the Saturday night, 5 days into the tournament. But it's a great release. It's not squash related per se. It's just the party, and get up there on the stage with my friends and play the guitar, kind of cut loose a little bit, sing with other people. It's a blast. We really have a good time doing it.
Well, that's a great transition to what is probably soaking up most of your time right now outside of your actual job. But the Windy City Open is coming up. And
into February, yeah. We're actually about 2.5 weeks away.
The countdown is on. So for the Windy City Open, I want to rewind the clock a little bit and talk a little bit about, once the court starts coming in, this is no small feat to get a 20,000-pound court into the University Club, and describe a little bit about what you and your staff have to do in order to make that happen.
I'd be happy to tell that story, and I'll start with year one, which was almost a catastrophic year that we first brought the glass court in. But, the club, because you've been there, but for anybody listening, it's, limestone, Gothic, architectural treasure, 108 years old. And as you can imagine, we don't have a big dock area. We don't have a big freight elevator. So fortunately, most of the glass panels will fit on the elevator, but the large frame pieces that support the court or that support the court floor, we have to get everything up to the 9th floor to our beautiful Cathedral Hall dining room. And where we set up the court in the spectator gallery. So these long pieces, they're 16 feet long. The only way to get them up to the 9th floor is to drop our freight elevator below the first level of the main floor. And we have a special elevator engineer come in, and we then go upstairs, a flight of stairs above that. We open up those elevator doors, the doors that, shield the shaft. And we drop a rope down and time around these 16-foot pieces, and then there's 2 or 3 guys at the bottom, and we carefully brace them on top of the elevator, and there's another assistant on top of the elevator kind of holding them straight and steady. They're not terribly heavy now. They used to be. And then we slowly take the elevator up, 7 or 8 floors, and then we open the elevator, the doors on the floor, the 9th floor, open them up, and then walk that through the kitchen and into the main dining room. I think we have to do that 16 times. All the braces, the support pieces up there. I said, do you have a question? I wanted to rewind back to year one, the first time we did this, because that's a funny story. Yeah, well, funny. It's funny now. At the time, I almost had a heart attack, but we had a miscommunication, I'll call it, with the court company that we used at that time. And they were bringing in, they told me these pieces they were bringing in were, 18 feet long. And so Chief engineer and I, Marty Kane, who's a fantastic engineer, crewman, team member at the University Club, and I got a 18-foot piece of a PVC pipe, walked it through. We figured out we could just make it, if we went through the front lobby and took a turn, we could just make it on top of the freight elevator. But what the company didn't tell us was that there was a big 3-foot flange at the bottom of that beam, and there's no way we could get those things through. So the first piece we're trying to get through, we can't get it in. It's the first time we've ever done the glass court at the club. And I'm walking around the club with the chief engineer trying to figure out, is there any other way we could get them up to the 9th floor? And we can't find any other way to get them up there. And I'm sweating bullets. I think I've worked at the club 3 or 4 years, and all the money's there, everything's ready to go, and you can't get the court in. But what happened is the chief figured out that if we cut part of the quarter-sawn oak out of our lobby and busted down a wall, we could make the turn. So he called the general manager, John Flanigan, who's been at the club, I think, more than 35 years now, fantastic guy, comes down and takes a look at the situation and says, yeah, let's do it. And I don't know too many general managers of private clubs who would be able to do this, but, John actually grabbed a Sawzall and started cutting into the quarter-sawn oak in the front lobby of his club. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to be fired when all this is done. If this doesn't go
First
really
and
well.
last glass court event, right?
But we did it. We got everything in, and the lobby. If you didn't know what it looked like before, you wouldn't be able to tell. We put it all back together. We got everything up there, and got it in, and that was the start of the glass court in Cathedral Hall. It was very well received.
We both know what the dramatic difference can be having a glass court from reviewing experience, but the Windy City Open has been going on for over 30 years now, and it hasn't always been a glass court. What was the impetus behind making that transition or the leap to bring in the glass court event?
I think that's one of the reasons they hired me when I was recruited to come down from the Minneapolis Athletic Club. I run 2 glass court events in Minneapolis, the U.S. Opens, and I think the club wanted to continue to enhance its reputation. And so they thought, hey, this guy's a pretty well-known coach, but he can also run big events. It'd be cool if we could do this at the University Club. So we tried to get the U.S. Open one year. Early on in my days there, it didn't happen. And I can't remember who the tournament got awarded to. This was way before Kevin Klipstein's time. But no big deal. We just decided, hey, what the heck? Windy City Open's been around for 20-something years. Doesn't have to be the U.S. Open to be a glass court event. We could do a glass court event and kind of put the Windy City Open on the map. So that's what we decided to do.
And so now, fast forward to where it is today, and the Windy City Open is one of the World Series events on the World Tour. And talk a little bit about, I think we all kind of see it come together from the outside, but how do you pull that together from your perspective?
You mean how do we reach World Series status?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. After the recession hit, I guess having the glass court, a lot of it just centers around the sponsorships and the relationships you're able to build with your sponsors and keep going. The first ones we did with a company called SSA Global, and that company, they were club members. The CEO was a club member. And they ended up selling the company, but we had an agreement to keep it going for a while. And then, like I said, the recession hit, and we had to downsize the tournament because we didn't have any big sponsors. So I think for a few years there, it was $20,000, and maybe one year even 10 or 15. I can't remember. And then I think it was 4 years ago now, a good friend of mine at the club, the Windy City Open tournament treasurer, Lonnie Essex, also a bass player in the band in the past, became friends with Mark Walter. Their children attended the same school. Mark Walter's the CEO of Guggenheim Partners. And he's a big sports fan. He's also, I think, the major shareholder of the Los Angeles Dodgers. And, Lonnie had been talking to him about squash and how cool it was. And I was dying for a sponsor one year, and they came in, Guggenheim Partners came in to sponsor it. And it was their first year with us. I think we did a $20,000 or $30,000 event. And Mark came down and looked at it and saw the squash and brought his family down to watch. And they were, what it's like, Connor, if you've never seen squash before, pro squash, and you like sports and you like, watching athletes, it's you're pretty, it's a pretty amazing experience. So he really enjoyed it and liked the way we were doing the event. And afterwards pulled me aside and said, hey, Lonnie told me about this glass court thing you used to do. But tell me about that. And what kind of players, do you get? And so I explained to him kind of what it takes in terms of dollars and cents. And he said, yeah, okay, I think we'll do it. It was a pretty short, sweet conversation. They jumped in for, not going to quote dollars, but a significant amount, the lion's share of what we needed to get the glass court that first year, 4 years ago. And they loved the event. And then we sat down after that event, or towards the tail end of it, with the PSA executive staff, Lee Beachell and Alex Goff, kind of said, hey, they talked to me about what a World Series event, 3-year contract, this is what they're looking for. And the other thing with, and they talked about doing prize money parity at the time, and that turned out to be a really important, very important issue for our sponsor, for Mark Walter and Guggenheim Partners. And I didn't mention Equi Trust Life Insurance Company. They joined us over this 3-year deal as well. Very important to both those groups. So, we had a nice conversation with Mark, and he said, hey, let's do it. Then, this is year 3 of our 3-year contract, and we've really enjoyed the past 3 years. I mean, it's been great to have a World Series event in the Midwest.
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo not just the leap of faith, but really the leadership role that the Windy City Open and Guggenheim and Equi Trust to help bring around the parity issue of prize money in the United States and the world to the forefront. I mean, it really is. It takes events like the Windy City Open to step up and do it. A huge applause.
I'd like just to say, and the U.S. Open. I know the U.S. Squash and the U.S. Open were they the first? You would know the answer. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We were the first. The U.S. Open took that first leap, but it's one of those things of being first. But then you can be out there alone, but to have other people really believe in the cause as well. I mean, that's significant. So hats
Right.
off.
No, we've been thrilled, and it's been great for us. It's another feather in our cap. The University Club doesn't like to be perceived as a stodgy old city club. We're not. We're a very progressive club, and the fact that we were able to, the support of all the sponsors, we're able to say, hey, we offer prize money parity at the highest level for the sport has been great for us.
Well, beyond your title sponsors, I know it takes just a tremendous amount of other sponsors and patrons to help make this event possible. And you end up having to be having some of these conversations. And how do you position it to make it a win-win for your sponsors and the event?
Well, I think for our event anyway, the biggest thing I think is for the audience that's there. It's a fantastic client entertainment event at what I think is a fairly good value. Our corporate sponsorships at the entry level is $4,000, then $7,000, then $12,500, then $25,000, and then title sponsorship, which is a big number. But you talk to people about how much they would spend on a golf event for their clients' entertainment, and it goes up into the thousands pretty quickly. For $4,000 or $7,000, you can entertain several clients every day over a 7-day period. And, we have a wonderful corporate sponsors lounge that we set up courtside, and our club is known for fine dining as well. So the food service there, it's not like you're just have a bunch of, pieces of pizza and some hamburger. It's really, fantastic food that the sponsors get, and open bar there for them too. So there's that piece of it. And then the entertainment is, the pro squash is captivating, and it's fascinating. The players have great personalities, and they're approachable. And I guess I wouldn't say finally, but as the kind of a coup de grace, the glass court in Cathedral Hall it's unique. A sporting event, a world-class sporting event, in a venue where it's surrounded by hand-painted glass and 24-foot ceiling and all these beautiful carved arches on the top. It's totally unique, and it's an intimate experience for a pro sporting event. I mean, you've been a part of it as an assistant director a couple of years, and you've seen it, I think, as a spectator a little bit too. I mean, you have to admit it's pretty unique and cool, right?
It's one of the most unique settings, I think, on the tour. Definitely the Cathedral Hall itself sets it apart from a lot of the other events on the World Tour. So it's
definitely it's unique, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful. And you and I have talked about this before, because I know when you were directing the U.S. Open, it's a blessing and a curse. It's a beautiful, absolutely stunning setting, but at the same time, it's not that big of a venue for the event, and so it's. We do wish sometimes we had a little more space to spread things out a little bit, but.
Well, I think that one of the nice things, or the great things that the PSA Tour has done, is with Squash TV, that you're reaching a wider audience. So all that effort, you're maximizing the impact for the community within the Chicago area, but then the world community can also enjoy it. So I think it's been a huge component for tour and each event. So you've been in the lead role of having to sell squash, and as have I. And there was a NPR piece that came out. It was both a radio piece, but then also a nice article that just it kind of reaffirmed, I know, what we've been saying for so many years, just how great a value of sponsoring a squash tournament can be. And that I believe the quote was that squash is the new golf in terms of the clientele it can reach. And as you know, the sports marketplace and sports sponsorship is such a crowded marketplace that you need new opportunities to reach those clients. I mean,
I saw that article, and you're right. I mean, I guess I'd say my experience generally has been, if I'm talking to someone at a company and they are not familiar with squash, it's definitely a harder sell, because they don't really know what they're getting into. If they know squash and they know what it is, then they know the demographic, and I think they understand the value of it. The trick is, just getting people who, have not been exposed to it to see the value in that. They can, even though the demographic might not be quite as large as, it's definitely not as large as golf, I guess. It's very targeted, and it's a very elite group. I don't have any of the statistics off the top of my head in terms of the net worth of the median net worth of a squash player, but it's very high, and lots of decision makers and companies involved in the sport. One of the cool things about pitching it at the club is, we look at the statistics when I'm talking to someone and saying, these are the national statistics, but we think at the club, the statistics, and you can raise the bar a little bit because of, we are a university club. that means you have to have a degree just to be a member of the club. So, and we know our demographic. So it's a great connection. But we're trying to get a watch company involved and a card company involved. And
Right.
that's been a tougher sell, I think, probably because it doesn't have as much mass media reach.
Well, I love numbers, and I've had to be fairly close to these numbers in the past, so I can fill that data for you. It's 98% of squash players have graduated from college. On average, they have over $300,000 of income coming in per year and over $1.5 million net worth. And 36% of the players also have C-suite status, or the owner or president of a company.
Right. So that's definitely one of the pitches we make is like, hey, when you're a corporate sponsor here, it's not the broad reach that Squash TV can give you. It's the people in the audience you're sitting next to in the lounge, and that's one thing I really try to do because it is a smaller crowd and a more intimate setting. I try to connect sponsors with other sponsors, and so they can make new relationships, make friendship. A lot of good business is done, courtside and on the golf course, whatever. So much of it is about relationships, and when you share an experience, it really has an impact sometimes on what happens next, business relationship.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of looking towards the 2017 Windy City Open, what are you most excited about? I mean, you've been doing this for so many years, but I think there's always something new coming up. And so what are you excited about for this year?
Well, last year we started kind of following with U.S. Squash and the U.S. Open and the Tournament of Champions. They launched, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, a Women's Leadership Award program, and we thought this is something we should definitely be doing as well. So we did it last year. And through one of our committee people who's also connected with our corporate sponsor, with our title sponsor, Kim Walter, Mark Guggenheim's wife, very involved in a lot of civic activities in Chicago. And we told her about this and wanted to do. We're looking for speakers. Last year, she was able to get Jackie Joyner-Kersee for us as a speaker, which was fantastic to have her there. So started working with Kim last fall, talking about who we could get. And I grew up playing tennis. I mentioned that earlier. We're very excited this year to have Billie Jean King coming as our keynote speaker. She's a pioneer in social justice and equality issues for women in sport, women in business. Needless to say, she's also a tennis legend. I think she's got like 39 Grand Slam titles. Yeah. And I was like maybe 10 or 12 years old when she played Bobby Riggs, and I had older sisters who played tennis, and I just wanted, her to beat Bobby Riggs so badly. Although the whole thing was kind of gimmicky, it really brought a lot of things to light in terms of parity for sport, and it was a big boom for tennis. So I'll get to meet Billie Jean King. I guess it's related to Windy City. I'm really excited that I get to meet her and that she's going to be in our club.
Yeah, what a great role model and legend, living legend, really. And it's fitting with what Windy City Open's done with parity and prize money that she will be able to attend and celebrate that. So that's great.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And of course, like you said, I'm excited about the pro squash. I do get to watch a bit, even though I'm running around trying to make sure everything's going well. There's some exciting matches from the first round in the men's match. If no one pulls out, which you never know, we've got Rami Ashur and James Bolstrop in the first round. I mean, how crazy is that for a first round match? It's like that could be a final.
Yeah, 2 former world number ones battling out round one.
And then we've also got Paul Cole facing Mohammed El-Shorbagy.
Oh, wow.
Paul Cole's definitely been a comer. And I think Mohammed, if I were him, like number 1 seed, no pressure on the other guy coming in,
Right.
That could be a good one.
Well, that's really exciting. And I'm sure all the hard work that you and your team put in, I mean, the community just thoroughly enjoys it. And so, thank you for all the hard work you do on behalf of the Chicago and world squash community.
You're welcome. It is a lot of work, and there are days when you pull your hair out. But one of the fantastic things about it is, like you talked about the community, is just first of all the kind of staff community, the university club and the athletic department team. John Rooney, Yoni Elis, and Tanisha Tillman really work with me side by side to pull the event off. And then we've got 2 committees, probably a total of about 20 people and tons of volunteers. Really help pull it all together. And one thing we haven't talked about is Metro Squash. And I guess for a World Series event, we're an oddity, we're a hybrid. We're a club event, but at the same time, we have this really top level status as a pro event. We don't really run the event to make the club a lot of money. We try to run it pretty close to break even, maybe make a little money, but our goal is to donate a chunk of cash to Metro Squash at the end of it. And they've been at the heart of our community. They've been a part of our events since they first came, incorporated in, I guess, 11 years ago now. They're part of it, and we're thrilled to keep it going. We'll keep it going as long as we can.
So now I'd like to shift a little bit into your role at the University Club. And you joined the University Club in 1999, and your role within the club has changed a lot over the year. Not only, I mean, part of it is because the club has grown so much over that time frame, but talk a little bit about where you started and where it is now, and even where you're trying to go as both your department, but then also as a club.
Yeah, well, sometimes when he introduces me, the general manager will say, "This is John Flanigan, our athletic director. He started out as the head squash pro, but he wasn't any good at that, so we moved him on to the athletic director role." He's joking, of course. At least I think he is. No, I started out there as head pro, and when I started out, we had one staff person who did game arranging, on a big tablet of paper, and me. And from the day I walked in, I think I had 4 or 5 lessons a day every day for the first year. And I think that Windy City Open, the first one I did, I think I had 6 weeks of preparation time from the time I walked in the door. But again, we had a great committee, and we pulled it off well. Yeah, so I think the first assistant pro I hired was Nathan Dugan, and that was probably in 2001, 2000. I'd been there a year, maybe 2. And yeah, if the squash community is listening to this, a lot of people know Nathan Dugan. He's the pro at the Cincinnati Country Club now, and he did a lot for our program. It was the first time the club had ever had 2 pros, and I definitely convinced them we needed them. We needed 2 people, and that worked out really well. Nathan moved on, as I mentioned earlier, and he's been helping to grow squash in the Midwest. And it was around that time that you started working for us. You were one of our assistants for a while there, pal.
Yeah, I overlapped. I was there from 2003 to 2007. So I overlapped with Nathan, and then Mark Heather came on.
Right.
So
yeah.
I get to.
Yeah, no, and hey, if you ever want your old job back, let us know. The door's still open. But we, I think it was around the time, a little before we hired Mark Heather, that the athletic department was growing. We were getting more and more members, more and more squash players. The club had never had an athletic director before, and they gave me the opportunity to try to do both, head pro and athletic director. So, of course, I said yes to that challenge, and I definitely had a lot to learn. And the first few years were definitely very challenging for me, managing more people, getting to know the different areas and how they operate. I would say I'm still learning, honestly, but I've come close to mastering some of the different pieces and building up different programs in the club outside of squash. But, one thing we did, some of the projects I've been able to be involved with then is we redid our men's locker room. We spent $2.5 million building this beautiful locker room, and I was a part of that project. And once that project was successfully executed, I was asked to join the senior management team of the club. So I'm one of 6 staff members who work on kind of seeing the big picture of the club and overlooking everything from its finances to strategy and tactics. And it's been a fantastic thing to be a part of the team. Really smart people, our executive chef, Mark Baker, our room's assistant general manager, Ed Tyndall, John Spittlett, our general manager, and Don Cameron is our CFO, and our newest member is Alma Guerrero, HR director. And they're all smart people, thoughtful, funny, run the club with a lot of integrity. So proud to be a part of that team. And like I said, still learning about management pieces. And the club is, it's one of those wonderful old city clubs, has a lot of great traditions, but has still managed to be progressive and keep things, stay up with the times, so to speak. Everything in terms of membership policies, encouraging, more younger people and women to join our club. We have very good diversity in the club, especially for a city club, I think. And we're just now, in this past September, we started our biggest expansion plan yet. We own the building next door to us, and we're actually adding 2 stories on top of it to build some more casual dining space. Right now, there's no place in the club where you can dine if you're just in denim casually. So we're meeting that need, and we're also going to have a new rooftop restaurant that looks right out at Millennium Park on Michigan Avenue. So definitely our biggest renovation ever, because we're actually building on top of another building. And the club's doing very well right now, but we think this is really going to put us over the top. Exciting times at the club. It's kind of never a dull moment place.
It seems like every time I talk to you that there's a new construction project going on that you somehow have you're involved with. And what about, talk a little bit about where this, just specifically with the squash courts, when you came in, what it was, and then that transition.
Yeah, sure. We kind of skipped over that. So when I first started, there were 2 courts on the 12th floor, locker room in my office on the 11th floor, and then 2 courts on the 7th floor. So, running any kind of tournament or mixer was really challenging to do with any kind of real social element. There was no space behind the courts on the 12th floor. I wouldn't say no space, very little space. You could maybe fit 6 or 7 people behind the back of each court. And then on the 12th floor, on the 7th floor, there was more space. But again, you had to get up and down, and the club only has 2 elevators, 2 front elevators to move around in and 2 back elevators. So you could wear yourself out taking the stairs up and down. So what happened, I mentioned we owned the building next to us. A club member owned that building, and he offered to sell it to us when he retired. We purchased the building, which is 7 stories high. And after we purchased it, a developer came to us and said, hey, you don't know us, but we're going to be your new neighbors. We want to build this 45-story condominium building on the west side of this building you just bought, and we need the air right to that building. So you have to promise us you won't build up any higher than 2 floors. That's what we need. What do you need? And we're like, well, we're downtown Chicago, Michigan Avenue and Monroe Street. We need more space, especially athletic space. We don't have enough athletic space. The club wasn't built as an athletic club. So they said, tell you what, we'll give you 8,000 square feet of space and build a sky bridge that connects the 2 buildings. And then on top of the agreement was, we get to market, the developer gets to market to our club members for 5 years. And then we could also market to their residents for 5 years without getting a condo unit there, and we could market our membership to them, to their residents. So we got 8,000 square foot of space there, and we built 4 single squash courts and 1 doubles court. We'd had a doubles court in the past, but we lost it when we renovated our locker room. So that made us end up with 6 singles courts. We had 4 singles courts on the 11th floor with the doubles court, and then 2 on the 7th floor. But the space we got in this new building on the 11th floor has floor-to-ceiling glass windows that look out at Millennium Park, Michigan Avenue, and the lakefront. You've spent a lot of time around squash courts. A lot of times you feel like you're in a cave, right? There's never any natural light. I still think there's rarely a day goes by when I don't walk over to the courts and, see all this natural light flooding in and thinking, man, is fantastic, or you go to pick up a doubles ball and look through the back glass, and in the summertime, and you see all these sailboats out on Lake Michigan.
Right.
It's a crazy setting for a beautiful sport. That was fantastic, and that definitely has helped us grow the sport. I don't know if I told you this or not, but with this expansion, we had to get rid of the 2 courts on the 7th floor. So we demolished them, and on the 12th floor, when we did the first expansion, if you can keep track of this, the club decided we didn't need 8 courts, so we put in an indoor golf center, a golf simulator practice area. But this recent expansion, since we lost the 7th floor court, we moved the golf center to the building next door, and so now there are 2 courts on the 12th floor again, because we really needed those 6 courts.
So now you have a total of 6 courts and 1 doubles court?
Yeah, 6 singles, 1 doubles, and there is a way we figured out there's a way we can squeeze 2 more courts into the club on the very top level of the club. We're working on a tentative plan to see if in the near future we can add 2 more courts. We could really use them. We have over 350 active players, probably about 50 kids in our junior program now. Or since Mark Hetter, John Rooney, and Yoni Elis have been with us 5 years. Yoni has. They've done such a great job growing our junior program that we're court starved at the moment. So good problem.
What you and your team have been able to help build up there is one of the most successful squash programs in the country. I mean, what would you, if you had to pick 1 or 2 things to credit or to try and replicate that success, what would you say those are?
Well, I'd say the first one is don't think it can't be done. It's like when I started there wasn't any junior squash at the club, and I started, and it's like part of your brain just thinks, well, you're downtown. And of course, some people live downtown, but not a lot of people live downtown. And you're never going to get kids coming in after school. You're never going to, maybe you'll have some weekends, but that's it. If you'd have told me when I started that our junior program would be as robust as it is now, I probably would not have bought it. But, so we started, doing stuff on the weekends when I was there, and, it started to grow and grow. And, then we figured out the kids really needed to play more. So we started to have more kind of informal social play days with the kids, and got all these, young squash playing members. A lot of them are going to have kids eventually, and then they're going to want their kids to share in the sport they love. And it's been a great situation for the club. We've really attracted more members just because of our junior program. Once you get critical mass, other juniors are going to want to come to play at your club. I think
so. Setting a vision.
Yeah, right. Setting a vision, and then just also just like don't believe out of the box that it can't be done because it's not been done before. When I talk to other club pros like in big cities sometimes, and they're kind of like, oh, well, we can't get any families downtown. We've proven that's not true. You can. And, we've even had families relocate from the burbs to downtown, believe it or not, just so that kids could be closer to the club. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is, there's a lot of good club pros out there. It's just, a lot of it is just building relationships with many people as you can and offering opportunities, make it easy for people who've never played the game before to get into the game. A program that we offered when I first started that we recently rejuvenated because we have still so many people who want to get into the game is called a squash crash course, where take as many as 8 people on 2 courts who've never played the game before. And at the end of an hour and a half, they know the basic rules and we've got them playing and they're having a good time. From there, we usually get, I'd say at least half of those people end up sticking with the sport. Maybe not right away, but eventually they come back to it. And even if they don't, they've experienced what it's all about. Yeah, it's just, little things like that, and we've been trying to grow our women's program for the past few years. I started a program called Wine, Women, and Squash, which, you throw wine in the title, it's bound to get some fans right away. But basically, it's just a mixer. And then after the hour and a half mixer, anybody who wants to join us, we go down to the President's Bar at the club and have some food or snacks or just a quick drink if somebody has to go on the run. And those have been extremely successful. The one I ran last month had 16 women come, and sometimes some of the girls in our junior program will come join them on the court. Squash is an easy sell once you get people on the court. It's a really fun game.
Yeah, absolutely. Just shifting gears a little bit. So that's, we talked a little bit about you and the club and the progression there, but then you being an athletic director puts you in a network of, I think, 40 other athletic directors that you guys all network with. And I'd be curious to hear what some of the latest club industry insights that you guys share or you're thinking about, whether something has been adopted or you guys are trying to think of to take that next step. What could you share with us?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, and the group is called NACAD, North American Club Athletic Directors. Wonderful group of people from Canada and across the U.S. We get together once a year for a conference. This coming year, it's going to be in Toronto, a great squash town, and try to share best practices. I think in terms of trends, like at the last conference we had in Seattle, one of the things that's up and coming is wearable technology. I'm sure, knowing you, Connor, you probably know more about this than I do, and you're probably already into it. You probably are wearing a Fitbit or something right now. Am I right?
Guilty.
I wouldn't say guilty. I think it's.
I mean, how else do you know how many steps you're taking in a day, right?
I don't know. I guess there's no other way to know. Yeah, so there's a lot on that. There's apps that can read your heart rate and tell you when you're stressed out, tell you when to take a break. It sounds kind of goofy in a way, but sometimes, we don't realize we're stressed out until after the moment has passed. You realize you were stressed out. So that's one thing. Another challenge I think that clubs are having is, especially private clubs, is trying to figure out, how to effectively use social media. What are the risks of a private club and private members, Facebook with your staff, that kind of thing. And also like on a management level, for some of the larger clubs that have a lot of athletic staff, just communicating with your staff. Do you email? No. Twitter? Do you just text everybody in the group? Those are the kind of things. But in terms of actual fitness trends, I think the jury is still out on pickleball, but that's something we've talked about. I think that's probably, my gut feeling is pickleball is probably going to do well in warmer climates and with the aging population, easier on the joints. I've never played it. Have you ever played?
No, I haven't had a chance, but I am curious. Very curious.
Yeah, I know a lot of people in the industry who are kind of into it and are big supporters of it. But outside of that, I think trends, fitness pieces that are still kind of hot. Don't see yoga going anywhere. CrossFit, high intensity training, functional training, big. And another thing that we're trying to get going at my club now is just more group training. You work out with 2 or 3 to maybe even up to 6 other people, personal trainer, and some kind of functional training unit. Yeah, lots of clubs have these like modular type units that you can add different types of exercises to. Their metal frames, like I said, they look kind of like a jungle gym piece. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, so like we recently installed one of those at the clubs, and it's been a big hit. It's amazing. It makes the workout, the exercise a little more fun. And we've got a timer set up there, and people are starting to do stuff. They've formed groups on their own. But I think what all of us are trying to do at our clubs is keep people healthy and build community within the club. The more relationships you have within a club, the more likely you are to stay there. So That's always our overarching goal. I'm trying to think if there's any other fitness trends that we see really coming forward right now. I'd say, clubs like mine anyway are fairly conservative. We tend to wait until something becomes something more than a trend.
Sure. Yeah.
Before we really land on it. And just, I guess, go ahead.
I think overall for the university club, I think they find a balance of innovating while maintaining traditions. Mm-hmm. And, so I could see the kind of creating the space for opportunity to be able to have athletics be core to your members, but still kind of waiting till we're not going to try the latest thing, but we'll wait till it comes around. So,
a good example of that, and I don't think we're alone with that. A good example of that would be like kettlebell training. And the first time kettlebell training came out, a lot of us were like, "Oh, what is this goofy Russian thing?" But now, if you don't have kettlebells, you're not a gym, right? I mean, you have to have them. Yeah. So I guess the other thing you're seeing with technology is like, there's more and more with the cardio machines. We just got some new Life Fitness treadmills in the other day, and you can log on to with your Netflix account now and watch what you want. I guess if that works, me personally, I'm just going to say I've never been a big proponent of all that. It's like, for me, I'm either going to work out or I'm going to be entertained. I find it hard to do both at the same time. I guess I'm old school that way. But yeah, I can't. Yeah, go ahead.
No, if you have any closing thoughts that I was going to...
About the fitness things? No, I guess, yeah, one last thing is, we're all trying to do more. I said keep our members healthy. If clubs have the resources, we're trying to do more with wellness, in terms of nutrition and, stress reduction and just keeping people healthy. We don't have a huge facility at the club. It's adequate for sure. So, we try to bring in speakers to talk about, health and aging issues. And I started a program with Transcendental Meditation Center in Chicago about 6 or 7 months ago, where they come and give introductory talks on meditation so people can learn about it and decide if they want to pursue it or not. So just trying to do things in terms of the wellness side to keep everybody healthy.
One of the last topics I want to touch on before going into the quickfire segment is you do have a leadership role within the university club. And what could you pass along some advice that has helped you or that you could share that has really allowed you to excel at the club in your role?
I didn't realize there were going to be these kind of tough questions in this interview, Connor. I feel like, there's this really old Saturday Night Live where Chevy Chase is acting as Gerald Ford during a debate, and they ask him a question about the economic situation, and so he got all these mathematical figures, and he says, "I wasn't told there was going to be math during the debate." That's about how I feel right now. Michelle, my wife, she's the executive director of the Park Air Force Food Pantry, and she and I talked about leadership a lot and how to be a good manager in terms of giving advice to someone. I think one of the things I've had to learn is when, and sometimes relearn, is when a situation arises that is a problem or a conflict, to try to stop and not just react and learn all sides of the story. If there's a member complaint about something, if it involves a staff person at all, this, right? There's more than two sides. There's more than two sides to the story sometimes.
Sure.
So try to find out as much as you can. A lot of times I think we tend to have like a strong reaction, either, for one group or for one person or the other, pro or con, before you really find out all the facts of the situation. I guess stop, think, gather all the information before you act. That's part of it. And the others, I guess, are kind of cliche. I'm a big believer in leading by example. Doesn't matter what your position is. I'm still, I'll still pick up towels. I'll still pick up trash off the floor if it needs to be done. And, lend a hand to my team. And I want to make sure they know I support them. And I guess there's probably more I could ramble on about, but I guess in terms of addressing problems with or challenges, I should say, with any of my team, with any of my staff, I always try to go into it like a coach, and that is, I want this person to succeed, because if they succeed, we'll succeed, I'll succeed, the members will be happy. So I'm having a conversation with someone about an issue. I try to approach it from a point of view of like, hey, you need improvement, and there's different areas, and how can I help you, and let's get it done. And yeah, I've been lucky that, I'll be honest and tell you that one of the reasons I took the job at the University Club was because of the reputation the general manager had, and I've learned a lot from him. He sets a great example, always acts with integrity, honesty, really cares about the staff, and we're in the service industry, and if your staff are happy, the members are going to be happy. So,
Right.
so that's a big part of keeping it going.
Well, those all make a lot of sense. And as we move into the quickfire, hopefully this isn't as daunting for you.
Well, I always say don't give advice unless someone asks you for it. But you asked me, so I'm not sure how I did, but there you go.
Oh, that was great. So quickfire, moving on to this segment. I mean, you can answer as quick or as long as you want. There's no time on this at all. Starting off
with figured out by now, me answering short is probably not my strength, but go ahead.
Your favorite movie or documentary?
Favorite movie or documentary?
Maybe these will be harder.
Yeah, well, it's because I like so many movies. It's really challenging. But I'm gonna show that I have a nerdy side and say Lord of the Rings. Any
one of them stands out, or just the entire as a series?
The trilogy. If I had to pick one, I guess I'd pick the first one, The Fellowship of the Rings. All my bandmates, if they ever listen to this, are going to be making fun of me for being a nerd, but that's fine.
All right. What is something or an activity that gives you disproportionate amount of happiness?
Gotta be playing guitar.
Yeah,
no doubt.
And how often do you try and play?
I try to play every day, but I don't succeed in that effort. I would probably say I play 4 or 5 times a week. Sometimes it's only 20 minutes, but other times it's 2 hours. I guess I haven't been competing that much lately, but I will say that I get a disproportionate amount of pleasure after winning a tough match. I just haven't won one in a long time, so.
There you go. Is there anything that you have you're thinking of trying or have tried recently that's new to you? And
anything I've tried recently that's near to me, is that what you said?
New to you.
New to me. That's a good question for me, because I have my spiel for the new year for members to motivate everybody, and as well as my staff and I, is get out of your comfort zone. So that's the thing I've been trying to encourage them to do. That's how we grow, right? You have to get out of everything you're comfortable with, do some different things. So the thing, I haven't done it yet, but I've been working on it, is I'm not much of a singer. I can carry a tune, but I'm going to do a solo performance at an open mic night with a friend of mine. So we've been working on, and they're songs that I've written. It's a double level of discomfort, not just performing, singing solo on the stage I have a little backup, but singing songs that I've written too. Looking forward to it, but yeah, that's new to me.
I like it. Well, I can't wait to hear how it goes. Do you have you scheduled it, or are you still?
No, it's going to have to wait till after the Windy City Open. The local place that I'm going to perform at is they do it on Tuesday nights, and currently that's when my band is practicing. So it's going to have to wait till March. I'll send you a special invitation, Connor.
All right. Well, I'll have to make a special trip. Is there an inspiring talk or video that you could recommend that someone could easily find on the internet?
Let's see. I can tell you that I don't spend a lot of time on the internet surfing. I read New York Times online and that kind of stuff.
Or an article, anything that's easy to share.
Wow, pal. Nothing is coming to mind there. Sorry.
Well, that's all right. This one can segue nicely. If you had to give a TED Talk, you're familiar with TED Talks, though, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. If you had to give a TED Talk, but the rules were it couldn't be something that you're known for, so you have to go try and explore something and share it. What would you want to do?
Have you ever talked about something I'm not known for? I'd probably talk about poetry. Interesting.
Why?
Well, it was one of my fields of study, and I do still write a little bit. I think in many ways it's kind of people have lost the appreciation for it. I think, hip hop comes the closest to being an active part of that still. So that would be new to me to talk about that. I'd probably address it in terms of hip hop and modern lyrics and how that's addressed, as well as what's going on with contemporary poetry.
Have you heard much of the Hamilton soundtrack?
I've heard bits and pieces, but my family and I went to see Hamilton.
Oh my gosh, even
yeah.
I mean, the amount of people that have seen it, you can count. So you saw it?
Yeah, it was a Christmas present for Michelle, and I've got 2 sons, Aiden and Kian, 18 and 16, and both of them really like history, and of course they're teenagers, so they love hip hop, so they loved it. Yeah, and I loved it too. It was fantastic. I would urge you to see it. Are you familiar with the soundtrack?
Yeah, I mean, I've only to see it is something I would love to do. I listen to the soundtrack regularly, and I mean, it was just, I mean, talk about Lin-Manuel Miranda's complete genius, and just my brain lights up when I hear it, and it really taps into, I think you said, like it's lyrical, it's poetry, and it's history all combined into one. That
Fantastic.
it just, so
yeah, what a genius. So, hey, I'm going to flash back to your earlier question. I thought it's something that I would recommend that people watch because it has to do with Hamilton. It's a show I'd honestly never watched before, but I was channel surfing. This was like 6 weeks ago. And I saw Drunk History. Have you ever seen this show called Drunk History?
Yes.
And Lin-Manuel Miranda is the guest.
Oh, no way.
Yes, and he tells the story. He basically tells you the story of Hamilton, the musical, like he tells the story of Alexander Hamilton and these two women. I can't remember the actresses' names, but you'd recognize them.
Oh my gosh.
They're perfectly cast, and they play the two main characters, Hamilton and Burr. And oh my God, it's absolutely hilarious. And Lin-Manuel Miranda's trash, and he's telling the story and everything. So you could probably find that online.
Yeah, for sure. And I can't believe I haven't seen that yet. So I'm going to have to go.
You got to check it out. It's hysterical. And
I will,
really,
for sure.
All right.
And this is the last question. So I don't think we need a drum roll, but we'll do one anyway. And this is in your wheelhouse. If you could recommend any book, it could be one book or books that people would read, what would it be and why?
Yeah, well, I'm an avid reader. I read, I read on the train back and forth, so that's a really challenging one for me. I would say one of the best nonfiction books I've read in years, I think it's called Being Mortal or On Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. I think it's Gawande, I think is his last name. He's a physician, and he talks about aging and death in our society and what it's become and how to handle it. And, my parents have both passed away, but if they were part of the aging population right now, it's a book I would have found invaluable. And so, and even I find it invaluable even as we're all going to die, I think, nobody's going to get, nobody gets out of here alive, as Jim Morrison said. So it's a great book to read, to think about end of life. It's a tough topic that a lot of people don't talk about, but this physician, Dr. Gawande, talks about it honestly and with great research and beautifully. So highly recommend that one, Being Mortal.
Well, that actually sounds very interesting, and it's a topic that actually really interests me because there are tough conversations and topics to have, and so any tool or resource to really kind of break it down and humanize it, I would love to read. So Being Mortal.
Yeah, he's great at asking the right questions and making you think about them in a positive fashion.
And then what's the other one?
I have to, that's a tougher call. Well, I'll tell you one that I love, just a beautiful novel, if I can think of the title of it. Anne Patchett is the author, and Bel Canto, it's a novel. Actually, it was made into an opera, played in Chicago last year. Unfortunately, I missed it. So, yeah, Bel Canto, and the author is Anne Patchett, and the story is about an opera star who is imported to this banana republic. They've also imported this Japanese business leader whose his favorite singer is this woman, this diva. And that's why he comes, and they're trying to get him to do a business deal. What happens is these political guerrilla group takes over the house the night of performance and hold her hostage. And it's a story about what transpires in the house as they're holding them hostage. It doesn't sound that fantastic maybe, but it's extremely well written, and the relationships that develop with the hostages and the guerrillas. It's a really beautiful novel.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a good one to check out. So, on that note, I just want to thank you for spending this time. I especially given that it's really in the thick of the season for you and how busy you are and juggling so many things. So I appreciate you taking so much time and everything you've done for the sport.
My pleasure. It was really fun talking with you, and I hope the listeners find the conversation interesting. And if anybody, this is the final plug, if anybody wants to come to see the Windy City Open and see some of the great stuff we were talking about, tickets are still available at windycityopen.com. February 23rd through March 1st is the tournament. And Connor, I know you're busy too, but we'd love to see you out there.
I'd love to be there. All right. Well, thanks so much for your time, John. Really appreciate it.
All right. My pleasure, Connor. Take care, man.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and for joining us on Squash Radio. We hope you enjoyed this latest episode. But before you leave, we just have one quick last message. As you know, Squash Radio wants to help tell some of the best stories from Squash World. But in order to do that, we want and welcome your help. Do you know a person or a story that involves squash that is interesting, funny, moved you, you care about, reflects your passion for the sport? Well, share it with us and let's try and get it out there on the air. You can email me at squashradio@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media. Again, thanks for your time and, well, until next time, be well and have fun.